Hello, hello. How are you? Gosh. So I am talking about life's results today. The way you perceive life has a lot to do with your perception. It's William Shakespeare that said, there is nothing good or bad. It's your thinking that makes it so. So whatever results or difficulties you're having today, um, know that part of what you're seeing is determined by how you're perceiving the situation. So when I was going through my cancer journey, I faced different situations. One of them was that I had never, up until then, been a person that had to take medicine. And as you might have guessed, one of the things I had to do while being treated for cancer is take a lot of medicines, right? I had to prepare my body for the chemotherapy. And with that, I was given 4 types of medicines prior to me even going into chemotherapy. And what that did is it created a lot of anxiety within my body where I would be holding the bottle of the medicine and I would be feeling very, very nervous because number one, I wasn't really aware of the names and am I really taking the right medicine? So I was really nervous about that whole situation. So when I spoke to my coach about it, I said, this is making me very anxious. Just taking the medicine was making me anxious. And he says, well, what makes you anxious about the medicine? He says, well, number one, I've never taken medicine before in that respect. Sometimes I would take a Tylenol here or vitamins, but nothing having to, that was treating an illness. And so her suggestion is, well, what if you call it something different? What if you're perceiving this medicine as something that's going to go in your body, something that you've not familiar with, something that is going to be basically making you feel a certain way. What if you perceive it differently? What do you think? Do you think you will have different results? So knowing that she knew more than I because she had been coaching different people at different for illnesses all for more than 20 years, I believed her. And what I did is I got my medicine bottles, and you can see I was given quite a few medicines. And instead of calling them the name that the doctor would say, I changed the name. I changed the name to Let's Do This, or by the best day ever medicine, or the Be Bold, Be Brave, Be You medicine. Now, changing the name was a very nuanced way of me perceiving what I was taking. And I know it seems silly. I know that, some of you may be rolling your eyes and saying, what in the world, changing the name to these, it's going to change how you're perceiving it. Yes, it did. Because I would tell myself, even though I knew the medicine was for something different, me knowing that this was Let's Do This medicine, it was telling my subconscious mind that I'm taking this medicine because I'm doing this thing. I am um facing cancer and I am doing this thing in terms of getting better, right? And it's just that simple step of changing the names of the medicine did a wonderful job in my nervous system to stop all the nervousness about taking the medicine, and therefore then my body took it in better, because anytime you're tense, anytime you're in a situation where restricting something or not accepting something, then you're going against the flow of life. And I wanted to be within the flow of the treatments that were given to me. It's very, very much the same thing I did with chemotherapy. Many of you know that chemotherapy is the main purpose of chemotherapy is to kill cells, right? It kills cells that are the cancer cells in your system, and in the process of killing the cancer cells, it also makes your immunity compromised, and it kills other cells that may be good for you. So me, instead of thinking of that picture of chemotherapy is killing my cells, I said, yeah, that's a fact. But at the same time, chemotherapy is actually here to give me life, right? Because without it, then the tumor would have grown, bigger, and I would not have, well, I perhaps with my the power of my brain, I would have been able to shrink it. But the method that I chose was to go with conventional medicines of chemotherapy and radiation and surgery. So me choosing that course of medicine, then I wanted to be in line with what it was giving me and what it was there for, which was to give me life. So thinking about it in a different way also helped me not reject it when it was being given to me. I was in situations at times where I would be in the waiting room, waiting for the infusions to take place. And people there were hating the fact that they were there. They were hating the fact that they were going to get chemotherapy. I remember one instance in particular where the woman was already projecting that the next day she was going to be at the emergency in the hospital because the chemotherapy was going to be so bad for her. And when I questioned that about, with her, I said, so why are you perceiving that way? And she says, well, it always makes me that way. Well, she was already thinking 24 hours in advance the way it was going to make her feel, rather than thinking, okay, I am receiving this medicine. It's for the good of to treat the illnesses. And let me think about not how bad it's going to be, but how well it's going to do in my body. And I really, really, truly think that because I thought of chemotherapy being a life-giving medicine, I then I navigated the illness in a different way. It was even the nurses were shocked as to the results that I was having. Before you are given the infusions, your blood is tested, and every single time my blood was tested, generally the regular patient, their blood levels are lower, their immunity is compromised, and at times they have to stop the medicine from being given. And in my case, that was never the case. My blood was always at a high level. And at the very end, what ended up happening is the nurse was very, very shocked and said, this is what I mean about you, Edna. He goes, your numbers today, which was the last day of chemotherapy, your numbers today are much better than when you first started chemotherapy. But it was due to the fact that I was intentionally working with my thoughts, intentionally working with my diet to maintain a good environment in order to get cured from cancer. And it was so. I am 1 year cancer free from the breast cancer diagnosis. And it was the way I managed it and I navigated that really taught me how much the tools that I teach can support anyone in whatever circumstances that you're living now. So, it was Charles Dickens that said, it was the best of times or it was the worst of times, right? And with that, it's your perception that makes it good or bad. It's really not the situation, it's your perception. So choose to shift your perception whenever you're encountering situations as I have, chemotherapy or other situations that you may be facing today. So with that, I love you very much. Again, I'm celebrating the publishing of my book and hoping that these conversations are serving you to live your best life. I love you. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.